What's up, guys? Welcome to Lift and Coast. My name is Sean, and we had an excellent Hungarian Grand Prix this past weekend. We're welcome to summer break. It'll be a few weeks before we have another race, so I was excited to talk about this review. Also, full disclosure, I am a Lando stan, so I was happy to see that he got on the board with the win. In fairness, I'm happy to see a lot of different drivers win, but I've been a McLaren fan since Lewis went there in '07, and I've always wanted to root for like the next young McLaren star. It was fun with Button there. Of course, it was fun the whole time Hamilton was there. Alonso came, was great, but like, I'm a guy that was a diehard Stoffel Van Dorn is the truth. He's going to dominate F1, and he's an excellent race car driver. Nothing against Stoffel. I just saw his junior series career, and I thought, this guy's going to smoke everybody. He got whitewashed in quali over 2 years against Fernando Alonso. And for all of Fernando's strengths, I don't think he would say his quali pace is like number one. It's really close to being a number one, but you know, he's always said like Fernando's not the best at any particular category. He's like number two in all of them. So he's beatable in quality. As good as he is, he's beatable in Stoffel, not for Stoffel Van Dorn. So anyway, fast forward to 2019 and Lando comes to the grid, and so I was just excited because over the first 2 years he competed against Carlos Sainz, and he did pretty well against him in terms of qualifying. So I was hooked, whether he ever won a title or not. Like, it's been gravy. As a Lando fan, I am completely satisfied with what he has accomplished, and I just enjoy watching him race. But again, I enjoy a lot of people watching them race, but I was a little more jazzed up this weekend than normal. Because it was fun seeing McLaren's updates and seeing that they actually were upgrades. They actually worked, because sometimes the updates are downgrades. So it was a good weekend all around, especially if you're a McLaren fan. There was excellent racing. Let me give you a rundown where we're going to go today, just so you have an idea. We're going to briefly touch on a bit of qualifying, really just a couple of high points from qualifying, but that sets the context for the race on Sunday. And then we're going to go through just the top teams today. We're going to hit the high notes, and then maybe at the end we'll do a little what if game, and we'll ask a few questions just to see if we can get our brains working. The goal is to have content every week throughout the summer break. I'm actually looking forward to that, just to talk about some things that are like on the back burner, or things that I think are interesting, but they don't have anything to do with racing. I'm new at doing these videos. Obviously, you could tell that. So I'm just trying to get good at one thing at a time, or get less bad at one thing at a time. But I am excited for summer break. I've got a vacation coming up. So anyway, I'm excited. Let's get started. So qualifying. Qualifying is always really one of my most favorite parts of Formula One, because it is the thing my wife will not miss. She hasn't missed a quali since like Singapore 2018, and maybe she might have missed one or two, but Singapore 2018 is what made her fall in love with quali. I started by showing her a still image of the Singapore Grand Prix at night, lit up, because they've got those low lights that are like set up, tear down, temporary lights, and so it looks like the track is glowing. And I showed her a picture, and she's like, "That's incredible." And then after Lewis took pole with maybe what was the greatest lap of all time, I showed it to her. I was like, just watch one lap. And she sees him. And of course, he's out of the car. And she goes, "How did he do that?" And I was like, I don't think he knows how he did that. It was one of those crazy laps. So, but since then, she's like, "Hey, there's 20, now 22 handsome, articulate, multilingual drivers. No commercials. It's over in an hour. I'm in, you know." And so we really like quali. It's a great front door for people who are new to the sport, and so that's what it's near and dear to my heart for that reason. But quali at some tracks is really good, and like Monaco, Saturday evening is like the most consequential qualifying of the year usually, because it has everything to do with the race. It's so hard to overtake. Well, Hungarian is not super dissimilar from that. You can overtake in Hungary for sure. There's like a couple of distinct areas, turn one, turn two primarily, but qualifying really matters. Track position really matters, and we saw that play out in the race. So we saw this really cool qualifying session. Lando got pole barely, but Kimi who we all have seen just dominating this year, he picked up a penalty. So Max, during his Q3 run, spun again, and he wrecked, creating a caution. It was a single waved yellow, and Kimi, going through the last corner, lifted, but the FIA says it wasn't a sufficient lift, so they penalized him for it. Now, this is interesting because this literally just happened 2 races ago in Austria. Max Verstappen wrecked on the last corner, and George Russell lifted, and his time improved, and even though he lifted, and they didn't penalize him. So those inconsistencies are highly frustrating. Highly frustrating. Let me just briefly, I'm not going to just, you don't watch videos to hear people read on the internet, but I just want to hit a couple things from the article. It's B1.8.4a, right? It says a single waved yellow flag. Any driver passing through a waved yellow flag marshalling sector must reduce their speed and be prepared to change direction. In order for the stewards to be satisfied that any such driver has complied with these requirements, they are expected to have braked earlier and or discernibly reduced speed in the relevant marshalling sector. So the issue, if there's any defense for stewarding decision in this one, if there's anything you can say, is that Kimi lifted right about the same place he always lifts in that corner. It was slightly earlier, but where he was and where the crash was, all I'll say is this. I think it's unfair Kimi got a penalty. But when I saw his onboard and you see where Max is in relationship to where Kimi, it's right there. In Austria, not that this is necessarily safer, but Max is like 200 meters off the track in the wall on the other side of gravel. This is like 20 meters off the track. Max is right there, just the way that the Hungaroring is shaped. And so it did seem a little sketch, but he did everything he was supposed to do. So I still don't see how you penalize him. I think these regs are silly. The word sufficient is used a lot. Satisfied, stewards must be satisfied. There's just a lot of subjectivity in this. And honestly, that's racing. It's always been this way. I would dare say it's better now than it's ever been in terms of having some objectivity. Used to, if drivers drove off track, but they didn't gain, if it wasn't perceived to be an advantage, they would allow the time to stand. But now they just came out with the rule a few years back. Like, no, if you are all four wheels outside the white line, you're off track and it doesn't count. It doesn't matter whether it made you slower or made you faster. It doesn't matter. I appreciate that rule, even though it's aggravating sometimes, because at least it's like a hard and fast, clear line of delineation. Like, this is out of bounds, this is inbounds. And I think they need to look at doing that more often with some of the rules, because these things need to be decided more quickly. And that, in addition to another penalty that took place, we'll talk about it in just a second, both of these were they were told to us in a delayed fashion, and that's not good for any sport. That's not good for any competition to watch the competition. It's over for multiple hours, and then to find out there are adjustments or changes being made to the results because of delayed penalties. I understand they want to talk to the drivers. I understand they want to study the telemetry, but it's all fallible, right? Every bit of it is coming down to just a few humans in a room making a decision. It's like balls and strikes in baseball, right? It's like college football, before replay, right? So if we're going to go that way, I think we need to make it a little bit more objective and just go with the decision and because this changing a couple hours later is really, really aggravating, especially when you're in a place where you're trying to get new fan interest involved, because they're like, what do you mean it changed? And that's weird to watch a sporting event and go, well, I'm sure it won't stay this way. That's just a strange reality to live in. And I know hardcore fans are the same way. It drives them nuts, because I do think, as subjective as it's always been, it feels like in the past, like my dad and his friends, that generation, they're used to just whatever the marshals say in the moment is what it is, and that's it. It feels like, you could come back with different examples, and if you have them, I'd love to hear them. But it feels like these decisions used to be made a little more quickly, and they're really taking their time. I know, I understand for the spirit of accuracy, but man, like let's get this done live in real time. What is this, a $24 billion entity or some craziness like that? Like whatever we have to do to squirrel away enough money to pay for full-time referees so that we can have some consistency. That I think every fan would be in favor of that. But just for those of you who don't know, the stewards are volunteers. They're avocational, and it's a great honor to be a steward. I'm sure you don't pay for your hotel room or food or anything over the course of the weekend, but it's not a paid job. So it's just a little weird when you're asking somebody to focus intently on the rules of Formula One for a weekend versus having somebody focusing intently on the rules of Formula One, 365 days a year. So I feel like that kind of created a little controversy, though. Again, I will say during Kimi's lap, his quali lap, as he's rounding the last turn and Max is off the track pointing the wrong way, it was sketchy. It was sketchy because Kimi's essentially still driving. If Max went off there, it stands to reason Kimi could go off there, and we don't want to see cars getting hit, especially broadside like that. In addition to that penalty, Lewis Hamilton got a penalty for impeding. Now, this is open and shut to me. I mean, I'm not blaming Lewis necessarily. He needs to be told that there's a car behind him that's on a hot lap. But he impeded Oscar Piastri and cost Oscar his second run in Q3. So Oscar did not have a chance to improve his qualifying position because he got one run in Q3, and his second run, he's diving into turn one, and Lewis is right there on the racing line. I mean, pretty hard to defend. Pretty hard to defend that. It's our boy over on Cam F1, Cam said, Lewis has got to quit doing the driving Miss Daisy settings after he gets done with a hot lap. And he does. He's done this a few times lately. Now, he's been unfairly penalized. I want to say that. We can come back to that. The whole penalty in Spa was nuts. Yeah, I feel like Lewis is held to a different standard in a lot of ways that he maybe shouldn't be. You can come up with your own reasons as to why you think that is. But he definitely, in this case, at the Hungaroring in 2026, during qualifying, he absolutely impeded Oscar Piastri. And it was maddening because it's like you're on a hot lap. You just finished your hot lap. Get out the way. Like, just move. And so it shouldn't be something that he needs to always be told. Just do it as a force of habit. Get off the racing line. I think he knows that. But I also think, in fairness, Lewis has got a lot going on in his mind. And he's still at a new team. It's very competitive. He's trying to do good. He's racing for Ferrari. I think everybody has a lot of distractions, though. I can sit here and make excuses for him. But the reality is he shouldn't do that. Lewis is one of my favorite drivers in the world. He is my wife's favorite driver. So I took no joy in seeing him get a penalty, but he impeded and cost Oscar any chance to improve. Now, Oscar may not have, but it doesn't matter. Right? You shouldn't have your lap impeded. So that is what set the starting order. So after penalties are all said and done after quali, it's Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, Verstappen, Hamilton's in 5th, Russell 6th, Antonelli 7th. Then Hadjar rounds out the top 8, Lindblad and Hulkenberg, which the Audis looked really good. And Lindblad looked incredible this weekend. Man, I like that guy. He is fast. And I don't know what's more impressive, how fast Lindblad is or how much Liam Lawson has stepped his game up. It seems that the RB, they have a couple real studs there. I mean, those guys are racing tough, and they are always on the edge of points, and they are fighting tooth and nail with each other, but it seems to be mostly clean racing. Something about Lindblad. I like his just sort of his ambivalence to what everybody thinks. He's like, it doesn't seem like it doesn't matter to him a whole lot. And I think that'd be very compelling and very popular if he gets into a big team and starts winning races. I think he'll have more than just a few fans. Doesn't help he's an incredibly handsome dude too. So I think he's got a bright future. Man, he is fast. All right. So the race review, we'll go through team by team. It's really, really hard to go through this race like from start to finish, trying to give you like a chronological timeline of the narrative. So we're gonna hit the high points by team. And so that'll be kind of what guides our conversation. Again, Lando wins. He takes pole position, and it wasn't a huge margin back to Lewis, 0.012 sec 12, whatever hundredths that is, whatever, 1/100th, I don't know. I don't math. It was 0.012. So he was barely in front of Lewis. Now, so Lando starts on pole, but we know that in the past, Lando has been on pole and lost the lead from the front something like 14 times, or I forget the exact stat, but it's a trend, not a spike. Lando, from time to time, loses the lead on that first lap, and then it's incumbent on him to race really well and come back and win, which speaks to how fast he is, because he won a world title last year. And these are some things he struggled with then too. It used to be the race starts. It used to be he was very consistent at the starts under one generation of cars, and then it was like they switched some stuff. And then the 22, 23 years, like he really struggled with his starting. Like his reaction time's good. AWS measures it to whatever degree that's accurate. He's always really high in terms of reaction time, but he hasn't always had the best first and then second phase, the whole clutch drop thing. That's been that's been a sticking point for him in the past. Then his issue, once the starts are nailed, it's like almost he's too conservative. And I understand the conservatism. It's some points are better than no points, especially when you're in a championship battle. You don't want to be overly aggressive and take damage on the first lap. So Lando did a really good job with this start. I mean, that's the sad part. He had a really good start. He covered off the inside, had a perfect start. No one could get around him. And then as they're diving into turn 2, he had the inside covered. Oscar is right behind him. Looks like he's going wide, and he hits the switched his back, and Lando goes wide. He just outbraked himself. It was almost like a mistake of being too aggressive. So in some ways, even though it's a mistake, as a Lando fan, I was a little more encouraged by that type of mistake, because it was cold tires, it was full tank of fuel, and he did this in Las Vegas. So the last couple times he's had a start kind of fall apart on him, or first lap kind of fall apart on him, it's been because he was late on the brakes. So like that's fixable. You can get better, but I think Lando is really fast. I think this is maybe something we talk about in a future show, but I think there's like at least 20 different skill sets that these drivers have that you can break down, like that I can think of as a meathead, right? And so I'm sure there's more. I'd love to talk to some driving coaches or some drivers to see if we could make the list more robust. But there's all these different skills at play when you're driving these cars, and guys have strengths and weaknesses all over the place. It's very nuanced. We're splitting hairs. We're picking nits. Everybody's really good. But Lando is probably one of the best at just pure ultimate pace, head down, go drive the car fast, be back to this point as soon as you can, go around the track and be back here as soon as you can. Lando's really good at that. And last time I checked, that's pretty important. He's also really good at his like tire stint elongation skill set. Like he can use his tires exactly how he wants, when he wants. You'll hear Will Joseph, hey Lando, I need target +6 and I need 3 push laps now. Go. You got it. And boom. So it's like that's asking for two different things. You're telling me to go over the amount of laps that we initially planned to go on these tires, and you're telling me I need to give you 3 quality laps of right now. Like those are seemingly two opposite goals, and yet Lando can make that happen. The only people I see like regularly that are absolutely perfect at this be Max and Lewis. I know we talk about Checo, and Checo's very good on his tires, but like that's kind of Checo's best thing, you know. Whereas like Max and Lewis they have like a bunch of really best things about them. But like Lando is I think he's superior to his teammate, and maybe always has been in his time in Formula One in those particular areas. He's very good at making a tire stint last, and he's very good at making the car go quickly. But when it comes to wheel-to-wheel racing, especially when it comes to the instinctual sort of overtake and defend and the defensive side of things on full fuel versus at the end of a race, like Lando's skills seem to seem to ebb and flow. It seems sometimes he's strong, sometimes he's not. It's just a little more inconsistent. Where Oscar is really good at wheel to wheel rate or combat. He's really good at the wheel to wheel racing. Like that's his sweet spot. And so it seems to be very natural. And Oscar's not hyper aggressive. Like he's aggressive, he's made mistakes, and he'll make mistakes in the future and hit people. That's going to happen. But like he's not reckless. He's not a brute. He's for the most part pretty clean. But he's just better at that. Like that's something in him naturally that's wired to take advantage of those things. And so Oscar gets in front of Lando right off the bat. Lap 1, 2 corners in, Lando has given up the lead, and Oscar's leading and on his way. Now, Lando was quicker. It was very clear he was dropping back to save his tires because the dirty air was causing a lack of grip, which means your downforce isn't working quite as well, and the car's sliding around the track. So Lando backed off of Oscar, and he would back up 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds, and then he would close the gap right down to he backed off like 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds. He would close up to within 0.5. Like he could just go. He could do it on command. And so you think, well, maybe Oscar's managing. Maybe that's the case. But Lando was getting frustrated, and he wanted an alternate strategy because he was, in his mind, stuck behind Oscar, and he has more pace in hand. He wants the team to move Oscar out of his way and let him go, but they're trying not to get involved. So Lando wanted to undercut. So he said, I'm going to come in. I need to come in. I'm going to come in early. And they're like, no, you can't let you do that. He goes, you mean you won't let me do that? He's like, fine. So then I'll just get a huge offset. I'll wait until he comes in. When I get free air, I'll go get a massive lead. That's exactly what he started to do. He waited till Oscar's tires were shot. Oscar pits, and Lando goes out there and starts pumping in laps that were far superior to Piastri's, building both a lead and a huge tire offset. And so I think we were going to see Lando and Oscar race at the end of the last stint, and it would have been very spicy. But we didn't get that because Oscar DNF'd. He ended up, when he was doing his outlet coming on back onto the track, he had some traffic that he had to pass, Carlos Sainz. Well, Carlos Sainz was fighting with a car, and he lost, his awareness, didn't realize that he was also right in it. Like the car that he was fighting, I think it was Alonso, got in front of him. I could be wrong. Whoever it was got in front of Sainz, and Sainz was kind of just following that car, getting ready to dive into the next corner, and he came right over on Oscar, and it was like he had no idea that he was there. Now, here's what I'll say. Carlos Sainz has a reputation for being one of the most adaptable drivers on the grid. Carlos Sainz also has a reputation for being very clued in. He's very astute. One of his heroes is Fernando Alonso. Like Alonso knows where everybody is at all times type of thing. But this weekend, there was a couple problems. There was a problem with GPS. So the GPS dots were all over the map. You could see this on the broadcast if you have F1 TV and you switch to the track map. Very hard to see where everybody was. It was clear the GPS was messed up, and the teams talked about this. Then they had issues with the blue flags. I don't know if the GPS issue created the blue flag issue, but everybody was getting blue flag. Lando was getting blue flags. He's like, I'm leading the race. What do they mean there's a blue flag? Right? So it was the tools that the teams normally rely on were not reliably working this weekend. So we got to give a little grace, I think, to Carlos, but it doesn't help Oscar in his broken wing. So Oscar continues on and continues to race, and then they think, because he went over the curbs, he cracked the gearbox. He had a transmission issue. The gearbox was broken. And just so anybody's no conspiracy theorists here, that is a piece that McLaren builds. They don't buy it from Mercedes. They build their own. And so if there was a crack in the gearbox, it would have been a McLaren problem, not a problem that we should blame on another team if you're a McLaren fan. But it was very unfortunate for Oscar, so he DNFs. So it was difficult. It was a difficult weekend for Oscar. He gets impeded in quali, so he doesn't get to put in his last lap in Q3. He's in a race with Lando. He did a great job to get in front, but then as he's out on his second stint, he ends up getting essentially, sideswiped by another car in a way that was seemingly unintentional, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There's only 22 people out here on this track. You should know where they are. But Carlos was so locked in on his battle that he lost sight, and the team wasn't able to give him enough data to help him stay out of the way. So Lando finishes P1, Oscar DNFs. Tough day for McLaren to lose some points, considering they had, after their updates this weekend, they brought a whole raft of updates to the car. So now they have the A-spec Mercedes power unit, and they have their upgrades. So this is a really good way for them to round out the summer. They still say they struggle in the really slow speed corners. Ferrari's still dominant there, but like on the like kind of normal slow speed corners like this, they're pretty good. And Lando is good at, you know, those low grip conditions. So it made sense that this would be a good weekend for them. But it was all dependent on those updates, and the updates worked. So that was great. If you're a McLaren fan, it's cool. You get to smile, you get to be happy again one time. They're not going to win the title this year, but it's still fun to see them improving. This is very different than the McLaren that, I mean, most of my viewing years, they were awesome and then they were nowhere. And so it's nice to see them like in the relevant conversation at the front of some races. That's fun. It's fun. It makes it fun as a fan. All right, Red Bull. Max finished second. Max is a beast. Just in case you didn't know, he's good at F1. Also, Hannah Schmitz and her team are awesome at Red Bull. She's the chief strategist at Red Bull. She is absolutely a person I would be headhunting for team principal if you need a team principal in the coming years. She's fantastic. She ensured that Red Bull in a fourth place car, that she gave Max every opportunity to push as hard as he could for the win. Now the win was never on, but third was definitely on. He was going to have to fight for it with probably Lewis, right? But because Oscar DNF'd, he goes from third to second. It's a great day. Max is just awesome. He had this overtake on Lewis. I forget which turn it was in. It might have been, was it turn one? Yeah, I can't remember exactly. It's all running together. But he got a BOGO, buy one, get one free. He did 2 for 1. So Lewis had just overtaken one of the RBs, and then Max is behind that RB, and Lewis thought he was safe. Max goes to the inside. It was turn one. Goes to the inside, and he just laid on the brakes, sails in front of Lewis, and you could tell Lewis was so aggravated because it just didn't look like the overtake was on there. It didn't look like that was possible, and Max came from a long way back. It was one of those highlight reel overtakes. Now, Lewis had just had one. He had passed the RB we were talking about that was in right that he had just gotten around. He passed him in turn 5 on the outside, which is really cool. So we saw really neat driving at different places. I mean, the kind of like stand up out of your seat, or oh, you lean back from the screen because you're watching and you're like, whoa. It was cool. It was cool to see. So Max had a great day. He complained about the car all day. He's very frustrated. The aerodynamics are broken. The shifts don't work. Its rear end is like all the problems that a car could have. But he attacked T1 on the brakes very, very well, and he was able to snag that second place from Lewis in the second tire stint, and that was all he needed. That was all I needed to take that place from Lewis to turn into a second. So it was great for him. And Hadjar finished P6. Again, Hadjar had almost all the same feedback that Max had. Just the car's not good anywhere. They're very frustrated. But it's still a good car. It's just not. It looked like everybody had a hard. And I think all the drivers complained. Ruth Buscom talked about this on the broadcast. Like, all of the drivers in practice and quality were complaining about the lack of grip. There's a couple reasons for that. This track was incredibly dusty. Also, there's a bunch of different sections of asphalt on this track as they've resurfaced it over the years. It's built on sand. And so when you resurface those tracks, this happens at COTA sometimes. It's good for a year or two, but then as the asphalt begins to settle, cracks develop. There were pieces of the Hungarian that were coming apart. And so there was a huge bump going into turn 1. And I mean, the drivers were all locking both axles, just flying through turn 1 in practice. It was brutal. So it was a tough out, and they were all dealing with it. They were all complaining about their car because it's just, that's not what you're used to in Formula One. These are the world's greatest race cars going around the greatest circuits in the world. They're used to being able to really put the car on the limit, and they just had to leave margin this weekend because it was very low grip conditions. But Max had a great day, ended up P2. Hadjar, P6. I have nothing bad to say about Hadjar. It looks like that guy's really growing, and he's working very hard, and he's earning his keep. It feels like this is the best number 2 driver Max has ever had, well, since Daniel Ricciardo. And back then, I don't know we would have said Ricciardo's number 2, but certainly Max is the dominant guy there still. But Hadjar looks really, really good. So that's helpful. Their team they're both being productive, producing points. So it's a good thing if you're a Red Bull fan. Number 3, Kimi Antonelli, Mercedes. Kimi had a great damage limitation day. He was quick. He was also like not on for the win. It was a tough weekend for them. I think if he would have started higher, I think he could have kept positions. I don't know that he would have gotten overtaken, but I don't know that he had the pace in the Mercedes to just go dominate and overtake the way that he has been on some of the other tracks. Again, Hungaroring is a short circuit. It's a top speed and engine. It's not nearly as power sensitive as some of the tracks we've just been to. Spa, Silverstone, Austria. Those tracks are all very power sensitive. Austria because of the hills and the straights. The other ones just because the percentage of time on full throttle. So Hungaroring, it was great. When we didn't hear anything about the power units, we didn't hear anything about deployment strategy or recharge. The cars are able to appropriately race here because they can use the battery and recharge because it's such an even spread of acceleration and braking. So everything works like it's supposed to at Hungarian. It turned into a really good race. But Kimi Antonelli did a great job. He was P3. Now, his teammate, oh dear. George Russell, he had, where was he starting? I think he started P6, yeah. So he ends up P7. So you're like, well, he lost one place. Well, there's so much more to it than that. So he basically almost stalled his car and went into anti-stall right off the line at the beginning of the race. So he just isn't going anywhere. Everyone's flying by him. I did hear Kimi say in the cool down room. Now you got to take this with a grain of salt because I don't know exactly what they're talking about. But when they were revving the engines, because these engines have to rev to get the turbos to spool up off the line. So you hear them, they make a funny sound, and they rev really high for a long time before the lights even all come on. And then they go off one by one. And then they go. George went and nothing happened. And Kimi said something like, I bet he drained his battery. So there must be a way to rev the car incorrectly that uses battery power when you're stationary. But Kimi seemed to know what it was. And like, no matter what we want to say, this one feels like driver error. George said it feels like the car has a mind of its own. It's a combination of things. Listen, George is not as fast as Kimi under these rules because his minimum speed through corners is not as high as Kimi's. Like, it just is what it is. There's different ways to go through corners. Watch lower lap time. Martin, he can make your head spin with the amount of stuff the dude knows about racing. Brad Philpott, when he's on Missed Apex, there's a bunch of different ways to go around the track. And fans who've been a fan of the sport for a long time know this. But in this particular set of regulations, when the cars still need to use a blend of combustion power and electrical power to ultimately produce their maximum power output, it matters if you drop your speed lower. Even if you're faster into the corner and quicker out, if you have to come up from a lower number to get to ultimately your top end, you're going to need to use more battery, which means that's got to come in. It's got to come from somewhere else. So George is struggling. It's a struggle for him, and I have a question about George. He's part of the what if at the end, but it was a rough weekend for the guy, man, and I feel for him. At least he got a finish today. Some points is better than no points. No collisions, no wrecks, but also nobody to blame. I think he worked his way back from. I think he went from 7th to 17th or 7th to 14th, something like that. He ended up having to overtake and gain like 8 positions, but like he did it. He worked his way back through the field. It was damage limitation But whose fault was it? Again, it feels like we're not really sure, and I'm not expecting Mercedes to completely sell him out. But it sounds like it was, at least in part, George's fault. And he is 59 points back of his teammate at the halfway point of the season. Now, well, we missed 2 races. So, and we may get those races, we may get like replacement races later in the season. But there's a couple different ways you can look at it. You say, well, thank goodness we missed 2 races on the front end, because the way George has looked, those would have been 2 more races where he's losing points. And maybe now at summer break, he can go change some things, get away, switch off, and come back and perform better in the second half. So in which case, you'd rather have more races still to come than races you've already done if you're struggling. But the other way to look at it is, maybe he would have done really well on one of those tracks, and he would have had more points in the bag, and he wouldn't be so far behind. I just don't know we have enough evidence to support that claim. Like, we have precious few of these little details called facts to support the fact that George Russell, to support the claim that George Russell is going to improve. Like, we just haven't seen it yet. We've seen Charles go through the slump and then come back. We've seen Oscar go, anonymous and then come back. We've seen everybody go through these downtimes. Max, Hadjar beat him at Suzuka. Like, that's weird, right? Like, we've seen these things happen, but the guys have all bounced back and they seem to have their head around it. George does not. He does not seem to have his head around it. He started really well, and then it's been a disaster of a season. And it's got to be really, really hard. He's been with Mercedes through, on Mercedes scale, some bad years. And he's beaten a really tough opponent in Lewis Hamilton. He beat Kimi last year, no problem. But here he's got a title-winning car for the first time in his career, maybe the only time in his career. And his teammate is just making him, his younger, less experienced teammate is just working him. And it's like, at this point, it feels like it's going to take a come apart from Kimi to let George back in it. And as much as I want to see a compelling title fight, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Kimi fall apart. I like Kimi too. I have nothing against George. I like George fine, but I don't want to see bad things happen to somebody else just to make this more interesting. I would just like to see George get on top of it and, produce more quality points. Now, Lewis Hamilton, so Ferrari, we'll move on to Ferrari. They said that Leclerc said, the last few tracks I thought we would do really poorly, and we ended up doing really well. Here, I thought we would do really well, and we ended up doing pretty poorly. So Charles finished, fourth? Yeah, fourth. And Lewis ended up fifth. The reason why is because of Lewis's penalty. He had a speed limit infraction in pit lane. So Lewis, again, is like by 0.1 kilometer an hour, but you know what? Nobody else had one. This isn't like the Monaco situation. Again, Lewis was wrongly penalized, in my opinion, in Spa. But he absolutely impeded in qualifying. And I guess he got a speed limit infraction during the race. I didn't see it. I don't know the cause of it. But that stuff can't, he's got to, it's like he's got to refocus on the detail, little things. I think he's been so locked into the driving portion that the administrative part of racing has kind of left him a little bit. He has to improve because Leclerc isn't going to stand still. And Lewis wants to win as much as possible. Ferrari wants to win as much as possible. There was a time not so long ago when Fred Vasseur was on the hot seat. Is he still? I don't know. I think that's silly. But regardless, Ferrari needs these wins. The folks at Maranello have been working like crazy on this car. Yes, they still have deficiencies. They're working on upgrades. But it seemed as if they could have done better this week than they did. And it felt like they were going to have like a second and third or a third and fourth, and they turned it into a fourth and fifth. Like, that's just, if I told you that Ferrari did that, you'd say, yeah, that sounds about right. But they didn't do anything silly necessarily. They were silly in quality. They sent the guys out way too early in qualifying, but that's a whole nother story. They should be, they're good off the line everywhere else. They got poor starts. They anticipated the track having more grip than it did for whatever reason. And so in a lot of ways, Lewis just got outperformed in that respect. That's hard to say. It's hard to believe, but Max is good, and those things do happen sometimes. In addition to that, Lewis got a pit lane speeding penalty, and that's inexcusable. Those are things he should not be doing, and I'm sure he's incredibly frustrated. He was when he was talking to the media afterward. It was brutal. He was the one word answer. No matter how much people tried to tell him he had a great day, he's like, nah, it wasn't. And people, Lawrence Barretto was like, you've had a good first half as compared to last year. And he's like, yeah, I got to do better. He's upset with himself. I understand why. It's probably appropriate at this point to be a little upset with yourself. So summer break can't get here quick enough for him. He ends up finishing one position behind his teammate, even though on pace, I think it's fair to say Lewis had the measure of Charles this weekend. He was just faster. I don't think Charles Leclerc has bogey tracks. And when people say that, it's just baffling to me. I don't think he has bogey tracks. I think Lewis, like Charles, is really good at Hungary. I just think Lewis is really, really good at Hungary, right? Charles is plenty good at China. It's just Lewis is excellent at China. So, and you could do this with every single pairing. There's going to be strengths and weaknesses between two humans competing in a sport with the same exact parameters. And sometimes one's going to win, sometimes another's going to win. It just depends on which course they're at and which track they're racing at. They both have strengths, they both have weaknesses, but Ferrari definitely got some things wrong this weekend. I think they got their Q3 run, the second run in Q3 wrong. They went too early. And then I think they grossly misread the grip of the tarmac at the race. Both Ferraris got terrible starts, and I don't know if it was just not nearly as grippy as they thought it would be, or if the temperature was off. Whatever the case may be, they had really bad starts, and they got overwhelmed at the very beginning. So it was an unfortunate weekend for the Scuderia. I know there's a lot of Lewis fans. I'm married to one. That's a bummer. Like, you hate that. But again, I think if you're a Hamilton fan, you're going, well, Charles is one of the fastest guys on the planet. I think everybody believes that. I mean, he's often been referred to as the fastest guy over one lap in Formula One. And in addition, Lewis is beating him pretty often. And Charles is having to work really hard to figure out how to get the most out of these cars. Again, there have been some drivers that these cars don't naturally suit, and they're having to adjust their driving style. George is the reason why he's getting beat by Kimi. Again, I think it's minimum speed through corners. I think that's that simple, and I think that Charles has probably had something similar. Charles is working his way around it, but Lewis has had a really good first half of the season. He's got to be like driving Miss Daisy settings is what's killing me with Cam. I keep remembering him say that. It's funny because he just seems like he's so focused on what he's doing, and then it's like he's out there by himself. It's like nobody else matters. It's like, hey man, it's 21 other cars out here. You got to make sure you're paying attention. And then the speeding on the pit lane, that shouldn't happen. He had to have gotten back on throttle early. There's a speed lane pit limiter, a speed limiter. They hit a button. It doesn't go any faster than what it's supposed to. So he must have overridden that somehow. And it wasn't by much, but they're going to penalize you for it. So it was that rounds out the four big teams. Again, in addition to those, the other noteworthy standout performances, Liam Lawson ended up finishing, let's see. Yeah, race results. All right, just want to make sure I'm reading the right thing. Liam Lawson ended up finishing P8, so in front of his teammate Lindblad. Again, Lindblad, we talked about this at the beginning, super impressive, very fast over one lap. I was shocked. I mean, he's so impressive. But Liam did what he's supposed to do, what he should do, which as a more experienced guy, he should be able to outperform during the race, and he did. And so, but to see both of the Racing Bulls up there, that's incredible. Lawson in P8 and Lindblad in P10. That's a fast car. Like, that's a really good car. They are best of the rest right now, and they're doing quite well. Then you had Hulkenberg in P9 between the two Racing Bulls. And so Audi finally, they're getting points. That's exciting. That's exciting for Audi because I know they have some deficiencies, but they're working through those, and they have they believe some very specific weaknesses that will be getting better by the end of the year. So interesting to see. Bortoleto was 11th. Hulkenberg was 9th. That's again. Bortoleto had a what I felt like was a very poor weekend for him by his standards. I just feel like he was often doing things that he shouldn't be doing, or he was having to work through areas that he shouldn't have to work through. I feel like he's better than that. So this track didn't agree with him. Everyone, again, was complaining about grip. So one of those things that if this is a bad weekend for him and he's P11 in an Audi, that's pretty good. That's very exciting for fans of the German team. Gasly is P12. And then, holy cow, Stroll and Alonso, 13 and 14, respectively. So Aston Martin kind of, are they back? I don't know what back means. Are they as terrible as they were? Like, no, they're not worse than Cadillac anymore. The brand new team. But they basically brought an entirely new car. I think we need to be a little bit slow to celebrate. I think Aston has the right personnel. They have the most amazing facilities. I don't think that their drivers are particularly holding them back at the moment. But they should be better than they are, absolutely. But they were bad. And so I think they conservatively knocked, a second and a half off their lap time. Like, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's alarming that it was that bad, but it seems like they're heading in the right direction, and they are waiting on a power unit update from Honda that should be a bit of a game changer for them. So that's exciting to see. But then you had on either side of the Astons, you had Stroll 13, Alonso 14, and then 12 and 15 on either side of those guys. You had the Alpines. So Alpine is kind of steadily falling back through the order. They were up there as like the 5th best team at one point, and they're slowly taking steps backward. I look for updates to come. Instone knows what they're doing. It's always been about proper resourcing at Instone. They know what they're doing. They have a good power unit. I look for them to improve. They have good staff there. The great stabilizing force of Flavio Briatore is holding them together, and I think they still have a chance to improve. And I mean that tongue-in-cheek, because Flavio doesn't have a reputation for being this stabilizing, calm character, but compared to the leadership they've had in the past, he's a huge step in the right direction. And we'll do a video on that as well, because I've got a whole list of Alpine/Renault question marks that I just don't understand. I think they're worth talking about. You have Williams, P17, P18, Albon and Sainz, respectively. Williams is still trying to move forward. They're trying to go the right. This track doesn't seem like it would be a good Williams track, though, in fairness. Williams seems to be really good at like the extreme ends of things. I don't know. It's like they're good on the tracks where they can lean the car out and get slippery and go in a straight line and maybe make the tires last a long time. But Williams is definitely, they have some improvements to do, to make. I think they are lacking some major infrastructural components still. And whether or not that's something that should have been fixed by now is maybe arguable. I just don't think, under the cost cap with the limitations they have, I don't think it's going to be a quick fix. And I think that Carlos Sainz is going to be looking to go anywhere else, if he thinks it's a step up. So for the sake of Williams and for the sake of Carlos, because I know Carlos likes being there, like he and James Vallis get along, him and Albon get along. I don't think he's dying to leave, but if they have to prove that they can make these improvements the same way that like Aston has had this huge step forward. Like, take penalties, do what you got to do. You've got the resourcing. Like, let's go. And people want to see Williams at least be more competitive most of the time. It may not be all the time, but yeah, so it wasn't a great weekend for them. It wasn't a great weekend for Haas. So anyway, Ocon is 16th. Albon is 17th. Sainz, 18th. Behrman, 19th. That rounds out your finishers. And then, of course, you have Piastri, who DNF'd because of a cracked gearbox. And then you had Perez and Bottas in the Cadillac, which, Mr. Loudon, I understand you're a new team, sir. I get it, and all the patience in the world. But like, your brakes have caught on fire at every track that is like heavy, hard on the brakes. Like they did the same thing this weekend. Unless I'm mistaken, there could be another problem that I'm not aware of. But like, yeah, Cadillac's brakes, they don't get enough airflow. Something has to be remade. Take a drill and poke holes in the housing. I don't know. It just seems like that's a problem that is fixable enough. So Cadillac's got a long road in front of them. I'm not as hard on them because A, they're new. B, what they're trying to do is really, really hard. Like if you would have told me you're going to bring an 11th team to the grid, I would have said that you want to be in Motorsport Valley for the bulk of your headquarters. You want to recruit for a number of years, and they're doing it totally different than that. They think having a plant in Indiana is going to be beneficial to them because they think people will want to move there. And just the reality is, like, that's away from people's homes. And no matter how much you like it, other people don't always want to leave home to go somewhere else. And Indiana's not some booming mecca. It's a great place to live. I have friends there. I love visiting, but I don't know that Indiana is a draw, and they think it's going to be. So we'll see. Got to be patient with Cadillac. What they're building is like they're trying to build like a full-size Formula One team that is going to be an independent manufacturer. They're going to be a factory team that has a large portion of its headquarters here stateside. This will be the first time that's done. Haas has a little bit of stuff here and a little bit of stuff there, but Haas is also a very small team. It's run a very tight ship. They're using as many listed parts as they can, right? Cadillac's trying to do something wholly different than that. Audi comes in. Audi bought Sauber essentially, and then they're building the engine, out of country. But that's the only thing they're doing is the engine part. Everything else is happening at Sauber, which has its own inherent weaknesses because it's not in Motorsport Valley. So yeah, Cadillac has the hardest mission, and it shows. But gosh, just get the brakes to work for the entirety of the race, and at least get the laps in, at least get to finish. So yeah, it was an interesting Hungarian Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli's at 219 points total. Lewis Hamilton's at 169 points total. George Russell's at 160. Those are your three real contenders. Leclerc 138 and Norris 128. I guess technically they're still in it. Max is in 109. Max could have 9 points and he'd probably still somehow be in it. But really it's those top three, Kimi, Lewis, and George. And Lewis had a penalty-ridden poor weekend when it was very hopeful and they looked very fast. And George just Georged. And he Georged it up this weekend. And so I hope the summer break, it can't get here soon enough for that guy. So they need the time. So here's what I wanted to ask real quick. A little what if before we close out today. And thanks for listening. If you're still here right now, thank you so much. What if George Russell wants to leave Mercedes after this season? What if he's like, I just don't want to be here? I don't think that would be the case. I think that would be like, you would still want to be on the best team, even if you're getting beaten by your teammate. You would want the opportunity to fight back. Like Bottas staying at Mercedes for all those years because at least you're in the best car. You want to at least try. But does George still want to be there if he loses this season? And look, I'm projecting. He may not lose. He may have the greatest comeback of all time. This could be a storybook ending like what we had last year was crazy comebacks all over the place. So it could still happen. But if George wanted to leave, where do you think he would want to go? Do you think, would he go? Like, I guess, would he want to go to McLaren? Because I think Piastri would love to go to Mercedes. I'm not sure Max is leaving. I know everybody says he's leaving. I know he's mad. I don't know. And maybe Max is dying to go test himself against Kimi because I think a lot of people think Kimi is the future and he's going to be a handful to beat. I just wonder, for whatever reason, Oscar seemed, and he walked all this back post-race, right? He said, it's not the team's fault. There's no way they could know that another car was going to hit me, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the exact opposite of what he said in the car after the race. He blamed the team. I can't believe you didn't bring this into consideration. Thanks a lot, guys. He was very upset. And for Oscar, that's the equivalent of like screaming and yelling because he's as cool as the other side of the pillow. That dude doesn't get upset. So he was very upset. Mark Webber has been vocal about potentially, wanting Oscar to get different treatment at McLaren. So I think he would gladly step out somewhere else. And so if Max were to not go to Mercedes, and would George want to be there? Do they want George? Does George still want to be there? Because he looks absolutely despondent. And I don't know how I could see George coming back and signing up to be the number 2 driver on purpose, like at a team. And I think maybe regulations change. Maybe George thinks he can still, who knows? But it was just something I thought. I was like, man, what if those two swapped spots? I think Piastri would for sure do it. But I don't know that he would have any better luck against George. It would be fun to see Piastri and Kimi because their styles would be unique. But yeah, George he's trying to change everything about what he's doing. And he talked about needing to switch off. Agreed. The guy needs to take a break. But he also needs to get in like the simulator, whether it's at his house or whether it's at the factory. He's got to start figuring some stuff out. I don't know who his driving coach is. Like every golfer has a swing coach. All of them. Every baseball player has multiple coaches helping them hit. Like Tom Brady had his own physio, of course, but then he had throwing coaches. Peyton Manning will go train with David Cutcliffe in the offseason. They had throwing coaches. These guys aren't trying to go from a 90 to a 99 in their throwing power, throwing accuracy. They're trying to just get 1% better. I wonder, does George have that? Like maybe he does. Maybe you guys know. Leave in the comments if you know. But it seems like he desperately needs someone who's a technician, who understands racing, who can coach him. There are internet coaches all over for driving, and you can listen to them. I reference them all the time. There are guys you can pay to help you get faster in the sim, and it works, by the way. Like you will drop, one guy I know dropped like over a second and a half after 3 weeks with a driver coach doing once a week sessions. Like, is it unreasonable to think that like maybe a driving coach would be a good idea? I know people probably get picked on and made fun of, but like, who cares at this point? Like, he needs someone speaking into what he's doing, because what he normally does really, really good, really, really fast isn't working anymore. So how do you adjust? How do you adjust to that? I don't know. It was an interesting question. And I think it's fun to ask some of these what ifs, because often things don't go the way we think they will go. And I don't know why. I could be 100% wrong. But I just don't think Max is leaving Red Bull yet. And so if he doesn't, does George still want to be at Mercedes? If he can't be at Mercedes, where would he want to be? Would it make sense? Because I think that McLaren and Mercedes would make that swap. I think both teams would do it, potentially. Anyway, just a thought. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with me. Look forward to seeing you next time, and take care.